So I'm guessing we're all here now, yeah? And can you, first off, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, fantastic, and I can hear you. So I'm gonna kick straight off because it's actually 8 o'clock, it's already started. And hopefully there's people out there watching us. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome. And also I'd like to say welcome to those people who are watching us. And a massive thank you for sharing that film with us. It was absolute delight, really, a huge delight. If people are watching, and I hope you are, please use the Q&A button, Q&A to ask questions. I'll be getting to you shortly. I thought, first of all, we'd talk a little bit about you, all of you, three of you, and then we'd talk a little about the piece, and then possibly, if we've got time at the end, talk about what's happening next and where you're going. But should we talk to Kristina and Sade first? Tell us a little bit about you, where you come from in terms of your dance career, and how long you've been working. Well, I assume you've been working together for quite some time, but how long your company's been working together, that sort of thing.
Lisa? Okay, so hi, so I'm Sade, and to be honest, we actually started off as athletes years ago when we were younger, and that was kind of our direction that we were thinking our career would go. And it was one of the moments where we were really good at athletics, where we had to make a choice if we wanted to dance or keep running. And dance was just for fun, it was just for passion, and we occupied our time, and we always made dances in our rooms. It was just something we enjoyed, but we were good at athletics. And it just got to a point we had to decide whether to go with our minds or to go with our heart. And we decided, let's take the risk and go with our heart. So we ended up training first at the Brit School, which is based in South London. And then we went to Northern School of Contemporary Dance, where we really, based in Leeds, where we really got to understand the craft of contemporary dance. And I think contemporary dance was the genre of dance that made sense to us because it was so open. And we learned all different styles of dance, and especially when we started to dive into our heritage as well, that we found that contemporary gave us an open playing field where we could actually just be expressive and not necessarily tailor our style in a certain genre or a certain definition. We can just express and see what comes out. Since training, we both knew we had to separate. Yes, we've been together from the womb to studying in life. So we thought we need to separate and just find out our own identities. What do I want to do in the world, and what does Kristina want to do? And we finally found our way back together. It kind of created a need. We came back together. We knew we had to work together and we had to share. And that's the birth of Alleyne Dance, actually.
That was beautifully said.
Sorry?
Sade said that very beautifully.
And can you tell me a little bit about Antoine? You're coming to this collaboration as a filmmaker, but you're more than just, you're not just a filmmaker, are you?
Yeah, I do have a dance background as well. So I actually started as a dancer, then later on moved as a choreographer, and now really focusing on that aspect of directing films. And yeah, with Kristina and Sade, we started collaborating a few years back. Actually started with Sade, collaborating with Sade, and then throughout the years, we've done more and more projects. And I would say it's been probably 2-3 years since we really dive into their pieces. We started with a kind of behind the scene or abstract piece. We've formed some rehearsals and then some trailer from the shows to kind of develop a vocabulary and really based on the movements, but as well as complementing that camera motion, camera motion inspired by their choreography, so that we can create a piece on its own.
Okay, so tell me about this piece. Where did it come from? Whose ideas were first? Which came first? The ideas, the decision to make a collaboration together? Where did it all start?
Shall I jump in?
Oh yeah.
So I would say Reunited, it came from actually a bigger idea that Sade and I have been thinking about for a few years, and we're always inspired by true stories. It's something that, I don't know, drives us, our passion, our interests. It's like a true story that we like to kind of create physically, but then deliver it in an abstract way that is suggestive to the audience and relatable, hopefully. And yes, this idea of, well, first he was inspired by Mo Farah and his twin brother, and how they were brought up in Somalia, and then Mo Farah came to England and his brother stayed in Somalia, and how they reunited as adults. And it made us start questioning ideas of immigration, mitigration, and what happens to families when they're separated for such a long time and how they reunite. And especially with twins, siblings that have such a strong genetic bond. And this has made us look at different stories around the world, and also delve into stories of our family as well, of how we came to the UK from Barbados, is where our family's from. And then with this piece, Reunited, we wanted to create this live feeling, especially that was created during lockdown, where this feeling of interaction, this feeling of watching things happen in front of you was kind of stripped away from us, and we were stuck with our screens. So we wanted to create this interactive film where it gives the audience an option to decide what to look at, what to see. And working with Antoine in the past, where he's done our trailers and our visual aspects of our pieces that we've done, we just had to work with him again. Also, what's beautiful with Antoine is that when we share ideas with him, it's not just about the technique of it, but he also understands the heart. And I think that's from him being a previous dancer or an artist, but he understands the feeling and the emotional tone that we want to get in our films and our productions. So Antoine was just the easiest person to run to. Was like, we have to work with you to do this.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, on my side, Kristina and Sade sent me a full-on document filled with images, idea, paragraph. I was like, okay, cool. But that was really great because from that, it was a matter of really diving deep into the concept itself, but also drafting it for the medium of film. And I would say somehow that was kind of the benefit of lockdown. By that, I mean that we have extensive meetings and much more than we would do usually. But because of that, in terms of character development, we really added some details and full-on personalities to each characters. And because of that as well, the filming style is actually different, whether we were following one character over the other, one being more settled, assured control with dolly and tripod, and the other one being free, wild with handheld camera.
I've got some questions coming in, so I thought maybe I've got some other questions myself, but I thought maybe it'd be nice to go to some of the people who are watching, or who have been watching. And the first one is Iris, who I think she's her first year in the CAT, and she wanted to know about how did you come across the set for the film?
That was just through research. We actually found a hidden treasure right next door to us in South London. It's just a matter of research, and we already had in our mind some sort of house or location where you seem so far away, but without knowing you're right next door, you're right like in opposite rooms. And me and Kristina actually grew up. I remember our second house, our first time we had separate rooms. We were like, woof. But it was really next door to each other. And yet there were so many different things happening in the room. We were trying to figure out our personality. So we really changed in a sense, and we really tried to be individual. And we wanted to kind of create a set, kind of the same idea of when we were growing up, that same kind of household that were close together and yet so far apart. So yeah, we just found the hidden treasure. Once we saw it, we were like, it has to happen here. That was it.
What sort of building is it? Is it?
It is actually, so it's Safe House. It's in one of the Maverick projects. So they have quite a few locations where usually they use it for film or maybe site specific. I'm not sure. Most of the time it's for film, I think.
Yeah, mostly for films. It's true they have a location, a chapel that sometimes is used for events and different things like that. But yeah, this one actually there is another house right next to it, and we visited the two, and both had their own beauty, their own flavors. But yeah, this one was absolutely, just like Sade said, it was just a jam because we managed to get different room, but each room has different atmosphere, and everything is actually filmed in that house. So from the beginning to till the end.
I'm going to move on to another question, and it's I hope I'm getting this pronunciation of the name right. It's Jana Campbell. She thought it was a lovely work, wonderful work, she said, and thank you for sharing it with us. She thought it was most empowering to watch, but she wanted to know about the representation of nudity at the end and why you thought that was important and what it meant.
Beautiful. I think for Sade and I, like we both haven't, well, especially me, actually, I have never done anything with nude inside. I always kind of thought it has to be necessary to do something like that. And with the piece, this film, we entertained the ideas of presenting this idea of womb, this feeling of starting off. So in the beginning, actually, we're both naked as well, or in the nude. And we experimented with, I don't know, trying to look nude or trying to look bare. And it got to a point where it was like, we're trying to do something that we can do naturally, you know, and it just felt right to get rid of all this societal movement material and things that don't make sense, and just keep ourselves, our heart and our feelings and our emotion. And especially towards the end where Antoine got us to have the item of clothing and drop it, and it's just us looking to each other. It felt more than nude. I felt alive and vibrant and colorful because of the feelings that I had for my sister.
And I wanted to add for that moment, when we filmed that moment at the end, it was like a golden hour. That was like the last part of the whole film set, the last part of the day. And then all the crew, the dream team, by the way, everyone started screaming, saying, we have to do it now. This is now. The sun came in at the right point. That's natural light coming in. And it just felt like everything fall into balance. And it was such a, even just to be the performer and do that part, it was so emotional. And I don't know, it obviously me and Kristina work together all the time and we speak to each other. We were speaking to each other before even here. We can't get rid of each other. But it was the first time I got to see Kristina there and then. Not the character, not the performer. I actually saw my sister. And that wasn't acting, that was real. And it's just a beautiful moment that I think we can't recreate. We can just cherish.
Yeah. So such a beautiful moment, and that's the thing. Just as you said, a couple of things were trial, but it was not really working for the purpose that was needed. And it's true that within the story, there's first that really intimate connection, and then within the separation, like I mentioned earlier, with different style of filming, so we get true sense of identity from them. But then, as we reach that point, there's really something that want them to finally be connected. And just like you just said, there's a sense of stripping away to fully be present in that moment. So it's symbolic, and also it kind of represents that loop as they are back in the room, but within those differences. And that's why as well they are not really, because that was a really interesting discussion whether they should embrace or not. And we decided to keep that distance because in the story they lived those lives. So even though the true intention of really coming together is there, there's still that gap as they are starting to discover one another. So that's kind of the beginning of a new journey.
Fantastic. I wanted to ask a quick question. I know there's a load of questions stacking up, so I can't be too long. One of them, which was, you talked about filming for a day. It would be good just to get some sense of how long the piece it took to take the piece to come together. So you did, was it 1 day filming, 2 days filming, 3 days filming?
2 days. 2 days filming.
2 days.
So yeah, so 2 days filming. There were many days of preparations. Then after those 2 days of filming, it was nearly like 3 weeks, a month to complete the piece. So it was because obviously we already had a timeline and had like strong ideas of how we wanted the piece to look, to feel, but then it was a matter of trial and error, trying different things that was working, not working, and really build that experience to really create that piece. So yeah, the post-production took under a month.
And all 3 of you were involved in the sort of the edit and the post-production work.
Yes. So we had meeting, exchange, and yeah, so it was really cool because I actually did the editing. So sometimes what we did actually live, well, like a Zoom, I can show my timeline. We can try different things together. I have an idea, put it forward. They have an idea, we try, and that was kind of the process of making it.
Yeah, it was a lot of communication, and also I feel like it was one of the fastest productions all of us have ever made, even going from meeting on Zoom to being in the studio to create it, to doing the filming, to the editing, also the trailer, the music. It was a lot of communication, all done kind of digitally, which was unique.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you a question now from Toby and Eden. They wanted to know how you came across the story of Mo Farah in the first place. Where did you find out about Mo and his brother?
Oh, good question. Well, me and Sade, we were either going to be a dancer or an athlete. So we still have passion in athletics, and we kind of geekily follow a lot of sprinters, particularly, or long jumpers. So with Mo Farah, he was just something that we kind of researched a lot into his training. Especially how he trained with the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. And we just followed his story, read his biographies. And there was a documentary about him, I think it was on Channel 3 this morning. Like, he did an interview and a documentary, and then that's when he started to reveal stories about his brother, and that just kind of sent us in a rabbit hole, actually. And that was the beginning of the end. And once we kind of have something that kind of connects to us, we start to find out other similar stories that connect. And it sent me and Sade down a rabbit hole of discovering our family and feeling of why did our family leave Barbados and who was left behind, and talking about when did we reunite, when did my mum join her sisters from Barbados into the UK, like things like that.
I'm going to move on because these questions are really stacking up now. There's some great ones along here. This one's from Charlotte. It's about what's the best thing about being twins who dance together?
Right. Do you know what's really interesting? Today on the news, they were talking about twins. There was like a special story on twins. So it's quite nice to hear that question. And also because I was looking at quite a few twins this morning, a bit freaky. But to be honest, we don't know the difference not being a twin. I do see the benefits of being a twin is that you always have a best friend. You have someone that's always going to have your back regardless. And to have that on stage, or to have that while you're performing, to really trust someone, you can't put it into words. You become fearless, let's say, because then you can really be radical and you know that person's going to look after you, whether that's emotionally or physically. I just feel like we're quite lucky to have that. And it is a special feeling to have.
I'm going to move on because these I want to get through some of these questions. This is So I think it's an interesting question, particularly at the moment. What was it like filming, and how did it feel? And I suppose there's a big difference, isn't there, between filming dance when you're filming and dance when you're live. And can you give us any insight into what it's like for you as performers when you're filming and when you're dancing for a camera and when you're dancing for an audience?
I can definitely say it's more intense. And I think what's nice is like with Antoine, because he was there and he was directing, he understands the dancer, but then he's also understanding what he needs on the other side behind the lens. So it kind of forced us to be clearer in our expression, and not just physically, but our face, our emotion, and what we see and how we feel, because it translates a lot. So I felt like that was intriguing, because I felt like I had to really embody this character. I wasn't acting, I had to be this character and believe it. Another thing was stamina, because again, if I'm honest, because when you're performing live, you go on a journey, you don't really repeat a section unless it's choreographically there. But when you're filming, you're doing it from different angles, you're doing it from beginning to end, maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. So, and each time you have to not repeat it, but recreate the moment. And that was severely challenging for me, stamina-wise, especially coming from lockdown as well. So yeah, I felt like that was the difference of that not repeating, but recreating that moment each time we had to shoot.
Can I interject there and ask a question? What else have you been doing during lockdown, and how's that sort of impacted on you as dancers? I mean, obviously, it's limited a lot of stuff, but what else are you doing to keep yourself sane?
We're really active, actually. We had, once the pandemic arrived and we had lockdown, me, Kristina had maybe 1 or 2 days of panic. Everything's cancelled. We're not doing nothing. We're at home. And then after that, we're kind of those go-getters, and we're really proactive. And we use this time, one, to reflect on our work and the direction we're going. And we're lucky enough that we had time to really think about the company and how we can develop the company. We also reached out to loads of vocational training schools and just asked, like, what are the students doing? Can we get involved? Can we keep them moving? Also, that helped us to keep moving as well. We also straight away started to think about Far From Home, which is the bigger production, and thinking, okay, what else do we need to plan? Now we have time where the world is slowed down, we can really spend time and unpick what we're going to put in our next piece. And then that's where the idea of Reunited came as well. Did I miss anything out, Kristina?
Oh, workout.
Oh, yeah, let's go for it.
And then me and Sade thought, okay, we're mentoring a lot of students, we're giving them exercises one-on-one. We're like, is there a way that we can do this efficiently? And that's when me and Sade not designed, but put in order our workout series, and we filmed it as quickly as we can, edited it as quickly as can, and then put it out there for people to train and have a ritual every morning for 35 minutes. So yeah.
And where do you get this? Where does one find this?
It's on our separate website, so it's called Alleyne Sisters Workout. So you can find it on AlleyneSisters.com. Fantastic.
I'm going to go back to the questions now. Now, Daphne's asked a question. Did you feel a personal connection to the piece after lockdown and being apart? So I'm going to read that again. Do you feel a personal connection to a piece after lockdown and being apart? So the piece was made during lockdown, wasn't it?
Yes.
And how much time do you spend together, or because you're clearly not together at the moment, are you?
No. True.
Very true.
I feel like, if we're honest, I feel like we're always together because we talk every day. We're texting, we're calling, we're video timing, we're Zooming every day. So I feel like we're always together. But usually throughout the year, we are kind of, I call it conquering the world, and bit by bit separately, and then we match together, and then we go separate places and match together. I think during the pandemic, it was the first time that we were both, I mean, it's the longest time we've both been in London for for years and living together as well. So usually together for like maybe a month now or 2 months, and then we're separate. For me, I think, if I'm honest, the piece had a bigger effect when I watched it, not as a choreographer or director or performer, when I could actually just sit down and watch it as an audience member. I think that's when it really hit me, and it actually felt really emotional. And I missed my sister at that time, even though she was only next to me.
So I'm going to move on to some of these other questions here. This is quite a long one from David, which he said he loved the journey created through the interactive experience, the device between the two character personalities, the roots, the personas, beautifully filmed and poetic. Well done to everybody involved. Wanted to ask about the creation process, creating for movement language for each solo. There was a high-tended African vibe mixed with the company's signature athletic movement. Was it led by intention, emotion, or narrative story? And how did you approach that? That's quite
Me?
a lovely question.
Well, one is that I think, going back to what I mentioned earlier, is that we work together. We've done quite a bit of different genres of dance, but then when we do come together as Alleyne Dance, we try to make it. We try to just be expressional. We try to let our emotions and our physicality is actually just that the expression, it pours out, not necessarily trying to define what we're making. We are naturally strong, we're naturally athletic. We actually started to research more soul train, like more funky movements, like funky house, soul train, 80s dance, flares, crop tops, disco. That was our first research into this piece.
Or for one character, actually.
Yeah.
For the character that was so many lights below, that was we were trying to look at kind of modern American lyrical boogaloo / soul train vibe. So we watched a lot of videos and we had a lot of fun in the studio, and then it was like, your turn. With the other one, with There's So Many Stars Above, the one in the orange and the colors, we tried to picture a mum. Like we tried to really, with Antoine, with his help, actually, he was like, you need to understand your characters. And that really helped us in the studio, because we pictured the character and the strength and the breath and how they look at things and how they move. And that kind of created that earthy African vibe, kind of movement, West African movement in the quality. And that's why the scarf was just a natural thing to have, because we really embodied that character and the intention.
Fantastic. I've got a few more questions. Over our time, do you mind going on for a little bit longer?
Yeah, that's cool.
Is that okay? That's fantastic. But I'm going to ask people not to ask any more questions, so I can get to the end of the ones that I've asked already, without feeling guilty about other people. And it was Anna asked about the moments of stillness when the music paused in So Many Stars Above. What was the intention behind, or was there something, or did it just feel right to do at the time? There's a moment of stillness. And
was that the moment of breathing? So when it was the moment of breathing, it was the kind of recognition of what happened in the room. So that's remembrance, and also the trigger that really push each character towards that final journey, towards reconnecting with the other. So those quiet moments kind of build up slowly but surely towards that ending, towards that connection, and also allow us to understand about that other person who is different but yet connected to the character we are currently watching.
Can I just add something as well? Like, I remember when we was in the studio and Sade and I was creating the characters and the movement, and then Antoine and his beautiful team came in. to have a look, and Antoine's already thinking about how he's going to edit it. And even though we have this emotion, he was thinking, I still need the story to convey. And actually, I remember him adding edits in our choreography to say, I need that bit to have a bit of stillness there. I need this and I need this. So it really was kind of a collaboration and a decision made in terms of the story and how it can relate to the audience.
Yeah, because it's true. Sometimes we do have, not sometimes, all the time, we have to implement not only storytelling elements, but also some technical aspects of things, like knowing how the light is going to hit the characters, or whether you just give your back, we don't see anything, or giving the back actually build up that suspense. So all of those elements really help into creating that full flesh character that we really want to discover.
Yeah.
I've got another question from Iris. I know you're possibly a bit cheating to ask too, but it's a great question, so I'm going to ask it, which is, why did you choose to allow us to choose which performance to watch first? So why did you give us that element of choice? What was the thinking there?
It's for being twins, it's always awkward when we ask, can you follow one of us or pick one of us, or no one likes to choose one of us. We've had that since we were younger, to when we had to audition, or even with our friends, okay, one of you guys pick one of us to go to the shop, or so that just to pick from two so similar, but yet we find ourselves so different. It's always been kind of an awkward moment for other people, not us. I just thought it was, I think for this piece, because the characters are so different and yet they're so similar, I think it's interesting to see what sparks your interest. Who are you more intrigued to follow? Because you had to make that choice. And I think that for us is really interesting. We had to ask our mum, who did you follow first, as well.
And it's beautiful because you actually kind of bring the audience into participate in the creative aspect of the piece, because even though it's already created, then how it is experienced will depend on which choice you make first, which is also a beautiful thing, is that just to kind of personalize, kind of to a certain extent, that experience.
I've got, there's 4 more questions here. One of them I think you've touched on a little bit already, but you might want to add a little bit. It's from Kira Wakefield, and I say Kira Wakefield because there's another Kira later. So it says, I really like the choreography. I thought it reflected the characters' backgrounds really well. And how did you come up with this? I mean, I think you've talked a little bit about was there anything else, any other insights into how you came up with the material?
I would like to say sound. Sade and I, we always need to have this musical or sounds, a tone that we hear that kind of inspires us. And the music we got from Giuliano is beautiful, and we're working with him again, and also with his band. And yeah, we just had to find the right sounds that can manipulate our thinking physically as well. We want everything to exist individually, but then when they come together, it's epic, you know? So we always want lighting, we always want costume, we want the movement, we want the sound, we want the camera. Everything needs to be stunning separately. So when it comes together, it's explosive.
Fantastic. This is from Amelia. She said it was a lovely, touching, powerful piece of work. And her question was about the moments. Were there creative accidents in the piece? Were there any creative accidents?
That's a good question.
The light. Yeah, the sun.
Yeah. There were actually a couple. So yeah, the first one, the sun, as we were saying earlier, the kind of that perfect time where the sun were actually going through that really beautiful veil, and also I would say the choice of the location itself, because obviously we researched it and picked the best one. But for example, at the end, to actually have that clear separation, really emphasize, like we were saying earlier, the fact that they are not yet truly reunited. That journey has just started, and to have the physical space actually divided was a beautiful addition. And yeah, that was done well after the discovery of the location, knowing that the concept itself was already created.
I'm going to go to, there's two questions. One of them is sort of, I'm going to go the other way around here. One of them is from the other Kira, which was a beautiful, empowering piece of work. I think, again, you've touched on some of this before, but there's possibly another dimension, which is, why was it so important to show such a close connection between you both as twins? So I think, in a way, you've touched on this before. I think it's a complicated question.
Why is it important? I think Sade's got an answer, but I'll answer it quickly. I feel like me and Sade are quite emotional, expressive, and people always say that we wear our heart on our sleeves. And I think it's maybe because we care a lot. I'm around someone all my life, like all the time, that I care so deeply about, that I can't help but give that care or love or to other people. I want them to feel it as well. And I feel like from the performances of the other pieces that me and Sade have created, it's very interesting when we get the feedback from them. And it's, we've got a piece about incarceration, it's quite dark and atmospheric and heavy subjects, but then one comment or someone watching it made them think about their sister. And she felt like, I need to call her tonight, and like that feeling of us being together, united and working, and I don't know, giving everything together, it inspires people in a different way. So I feel like it's something quite beautiful and important to have, that it's not just an impressive piece, but it touches you, it penetrates your heart and has an effect on you wherever it is.
Fantastic. So I'm going to, the last question's from Amelia, and actually it's the question I wanted to ask as well, which is what's next in store for Alleyne Dance? And is there another collaboration with Antoine in the offing, or can we look forward to that? So let's tell us what's happening next, and tell us. I'm desperate to find out. Right? Not that I don't, a little bit.
The very, very next project is Bonded, and that's going to be in the first outdoor work by Alleyne Dance, and it will premiere hopefully in May. And that's another piece, and it's based about the connection of being twins or being connected, having a strong bond, but also what happens when deterioration happens or something shifts in the nature that you're not even, but yet the bond can get stronger. So we're really excited to show that this year.
And then the next one, which actually very excitingly DanceEast is a part of, and they're also co-commissioning our research and our creation. One of the commissioners, and also we're working with Antoine again. It's called Far From Home, and Reunited basically was a small segment of this bigger idea that we're creating. And it's not just going to be us performing, but we're also going to be using a community cast as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of participation around Ipswich with DanceEast and everything. And we want to not only touch people with performances, but we also want to get involved and actually communicate and share experiences with the community. So it's something that we're really excited about and investing in, and want to meet as many people as we can.
And this production is going to be the first time that we introduce Alleyne Dance company dancers, where it won't just be me and Kristina as professional dancers, but also others.
Yeah,
fantastic news. I have to say, it's going to be tough being on stage next to you two. I would say. Yeah, and you've been doing some work. You're going to be doing some work with our CAT students. That's correct, isn't it? And some other stuff.
Yep, that's happening tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that's very, very exciting. I'm really excited about that. It's a terrible shame that we haven't got you live, but it's fantastic to have had this conversation with you this evening. And thanks to you, Antoine, as well, for joining us this evening. I hope you'll be coming to seeing you dancing live. I want to say thanks to all the people who have asked all these fantastic questions and have been watching us. I also rather hoping we've got somebody from Albuquerque watching us, a friend of yours, a fan of yours. But you send out your wishes. Fantastic. it's all that remains for me to say good night to you. I hope we'll be seeing you dancing at DanceEast very, very soon. And thank you for sharing such a lovely piece of work. We feel really honoured. We're very lucky in Ipswich to have such amazing artists.
Thanks for having us.
Cheerio.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.